Okay, you can start if you want.
My name is Skip Weber. I was in the U.S. Army in Vietnam in 1969 and 1970. I enlisted because I was at LSU and there was a war going on and I was in perfect health and I knew that I would go sooner or later. So I went through the ROTC program for 4 years and then became a lieutenant in the Army. And ultimately, after being trained as a tank platoon leader, I was sent to Vietnam and sent to an infantry unit, which infantry means you're walking on the ground with a rifle. Tanks mean you're riding with a big gun and armor around you. So I preferred tanks. Anyway, my family was pretty upset about me having to go to war because a lot of people were getting killed and wounded and came back mutilated, and it was really bad. And the spirit of the country in 1969 was very much anti war, and it became worse, it became more so as time went by. So when I went, I felt like I was going to give my life for my country, and duty, honor, country, I thought was a real big thing. In retrospect, I'm not so sure it was. I'm not so sure that the cause that we were sent for, which was to stop the domino effect of, of countries falling into communist spheres, was enough for me to give my life for. But at the time, I was brainwashed into thinking that that was a good idea. So I went there, and the first thing that you notice, you're on an airplane it's it's for people, but it's not like a normal airline is run today. It's for the military, and there's nothing but guys going to war, and they're looking out the window and they're looking down. And when we get to Vietnam, you can see all the bomb craters and machine gun nests, and all of a sudden, guys on the plane start crying because we all know that the whole bunch of us are not going to come back alive and in one piece. So that was not good. And when you get in country, you feel like, uh, boy, give me a rifle right away, and they don't do that. You have to go get processed in different things. And I got sent to a place where they literally would put orders on the wall and say, so and so got killed yesterday, so that's where you're going tomorrow. And that was not fun. So I ended up being assigned to an infantry division, as I said. And when I got there to this infantry division in Cu Chi, South Vietnam, the 25th Infantry Division, luckily I was in a replacement detachment where there was a young first lieutenant, and this was a Monday, and he was going home on Wednesday. Well, whenever somebody is that short, as we call it, meaning very little time to go, they're just impossible to deal with. But he was very nice, and we got to talking and found out he was from Valparaiso University, which I'd never heard of before. Until one summer I worked in a chemical plant on the river, and I had a carpool with a guy from Valparaiso University, so I'd heard of it. And we got to talking and found out this was that guy's roommate. So he walked me over to division headquarters and looked up on the big wall where everybody's name was and moved me from an infantry unit to an armor unit where I could have tanks. And that probably saved my life. So it's who do you know is very important in this world. Um, was I ever in combat? Yes. Every morning, what we would do would be to get up at sunrise and get ready on the machine guns for the attack because everybody was taught that the attack came at dawn, only it never did. So what we would then do would be to take one tank and two armored personnel carriers, and we would go out on a mission to find mines that were laid in the road overnight. And mines were particularly destructive. A human could walk on the mine and not set it off. It required a whole lot of pounds per square foot to set it off. So sometimes a Jeep could drive over it and wouldn't set it off. But a tank definitely would. So we went out looking for mines, and the engineer sweep team that would be in front of us looking for the mines had mine detectors that looked for metal mines. Well, the only problem was there's a lot of shrapnel all over the place in Vietnam, and so they kept getting false reports. And the enemy didn't use metal mines, they used plastic mines. So there was very, very small chance of detection except for by sight. So we kept hitting mines, and it was horrible. We'd go out before breakfast, one tank, two PCs, and then after breakfast, the rest of the whole battalion would come behind us, and we kept hitting mines. And one reason was because we would let the engineer sweep team go up about 100 meters ahead of us in case we hit a mine, it wouldn't hurt them. So that's when I decided instead of 100 meters, we would go up 10 meters behind them. So if we did hit a mine, it would take them with us. And all of a sudden, they started finding more mines. So I was very glad of that. War is not good. It was really an impression that was made on me was to see the women and children like little bitty kids that grew up in that environment, so it's perfectly normal for them. For instance, there was a little boy who must have been 7 or 8 or 9, maybe 10, who had a bicycle, and he would come out and he would sell ice cold Coca-Colas to us. Well, we didn't have ice, we didn't have cold drinks and so forth, and so we'd want to buy stuff like that. But it was against the rules for us to buy it because sometimes the enemy would find a way of opening up the Coke and put shards of glass in it. And so when we would drink it, it would hurt the soldier that drank it. Well, we didn't think this little kid was going to do anything like that to us, so we were pretty protective. And one day a tank accidentally rolled over his bicycle. And the poor kid cried and cried and cried and cried. So we reported it up to the chain of command, and they said they would have the public relations department look into it, which to us was a lot of bull. So what we did was collected money amongst ourselves and went out and bought the kid a new bicycle. But the fact that he was so used to just going along with us out to war every morning was kind of different from what you might see here in the United States today. Combat was interesting because it's defined a lot of times as weeks and weeks and weeks of boredom, punctuated by moments of absolute chaos and terror when everything is breaking loose and you're going crazy. Like one of my best friends was serving up in the mountains of Vietnam with the Montagnard Indians, and he was there in a perimeter one night when they were overrun, and he was a forward observer for artillery. And so what he had to do was to call in artillery and get it closer and closer and closer and closer to his own position in order to kill the bad guys. And in doing so, he killed the guys next to him. So that really messed him up for a long time. So combat wasn't a whole lot of fun. Homecoming was bizarre. You know, after being out in the jungle for a year and, for instance, not having any toilets, it was really interesting to come home and use a toilet. I mean, that was really, really different. And in 1970, when I came home, there was so much anti-war sentiment that people would spit on you, people would call you baby killers, people were really nasty to soldiers coming home. When it wasn't the soldiers that were at fault, I certainly didn't want to go, and most other ones didn't either. But the whole country was anti-war, and made it very well known that they didn't like the whole situation, wanted the war to end. Well, that was just fine with me, but do it honorably. So when I came home, I would go to parties with people I'd gone to high school with, and they weren't very friendly because they were so anti-war, and I was a veteran, and so therefore I was a baby killer and a bad guy. It's quite different today. Today, when you see a soldier walking through airports, for instance, people stop him and say, "Thank you for your service." People thank me now for my service too. Even when I cross the causeway and hand my money to the toll taker, they'll say things like that. But it wasn't the way it was in 1970. It was vastly different. My current life has been affected by serving in the war because I have an appreciation now for life, and for the things that we enjoy here in the United States of America that other people don't have. Like, speaking of toilets, maybe only 25 or 30% of the whole world population have toilets. Think about it. What do? You got a family, you're living in this cramped urban society, and it's nasty. Where do you go and what do you do? I mean, it's not very private and it's not very sanitary. So I'm very, very happy to come home and see the freedoms that we have and the things that we have here in this country, and the things that weren't over there. For instance, having to worry every night about somebody lobbing a mortar into your bedroom and killing you. That was kind of bizarre. I was a college graduate, so I was in my early 20s when I was deployed, and I didn't know anybody at my base except for the guy I told you from Valparaiso University, who I saw for one day. He took care of me and went home, and I went out into the field. While I was there, I questioned what we were fighting for. To stop communism? Whereas when I would go into a town or a village, I would see people looking at me like they weren't real happy to have me there and my tanks. So it made me believe that, we're really fighting somebody else's civil war, and I'm not so sure that we should have done that. But it was too late by the time I got there. As far as weapons, I had an M48A3 Patton tank. The Patton tank was from the Korean War vintage. It had a 90 millimeter main gun, which is about that big around, gun tube and round that would come out. On top of it, we welded the mount from a tripod of a 50 caliber machine gun. And so my job was to shoot the main gun and to shoot the machine gun. Inside the tank, we had a coaxially mounted with the main gun a 7.62 millimeter machine gun. In addition to that, I carried what was called a blooper. A blooper is an M79 grenade launcher, and it's the most fun weapon that we had because it was like a sawed-off shotgun. It was about this long. It opens up, you put in a grenade, you close it up, and you shoot it, and it goes bloop, bam. So we would do what was called reconnaissance in force. So we would approach an area that looked like there might be some bad guys in foxholes or something, and we would shoot the blooper into that area so that they wouldn't stick their heads up and shoot at us. Did I write letters to anyone? Yes, we could write letters home very frequently to our family, and there was no postage due, which was kind of interesting because sometimes the letters would arrive and the postman would try and collect for postage. Did I come home for holidays? No, you can't come home from holidays when you're in Vietnam. I mean, it takes 24 hours to fly there. Do I keep in contact with people that I was stationed with? Yes and no. Loosely contact, but there is a group of Vietnam veterans that I run into all the time, as I did last week, which was the 50th commemoration of the Vietnam War on March the 29th. And I went to a ceremony at an American Legion Hall on Metairie Road that had a lot of dignitaries and all that sort of. They gave out little pins for us to wear and so forth. And there were guys there that I know had served, although I didn't know them when I was there because it was a big place and we were all scattered all over the place. So that's the story. I mainly was working in a tank platoon in a headquarters company in a battalion, and we would have this earth that we pushed up that was surrounding us at night called a berm, and we would put razor wire out, concertina wire, and we would have our guns all pointed. We'd always keep one guy, always 24/7 on the machine gun on the 50 caliber up there in case of attack. And within the company that I was in, we had a tank platoon consisting of 5 tanks. There was a mechanized infantry platoon, which was armored personnel carriers carrying guys with rifles to go out and walk